The issue is not so much of the reps. It is because the marketers have not yet embraced this on a very general level.
Interesting.
So then co-create your objective together with them, because the number one layer that we need to first elevate in terms of the skill sets and the understanding of the role of Omnichannel are the content creators.
Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Amplifiz Podcast, the video podcast that helps you and your team maximize your potential. Welcome, Michelle Thio, to the show. How are you?
Hello, Guillaume. I'm very good. Good to see you all. I have a dual role as the head of marketing as well as commercial excellence and IT for the region. So I started off as the marketing head. In my previous roles, I was heading up launch excellence in previous organization, but primarily in marketing. So when there was a need to basically have someone at the center to orchestrate all the digital evolution that the company is heading towards, my manager then decided that he should have someone to also oversee commercial excellence, and he thought that he should have it from someone who's currently in the business itself to head it, rather than to have a separate person running it.
Mm-hmm.
And the key reason behind this is really because we do see a lot of in-silo movements if we have different functions working on the same topic. So I think that's when he tried to infuse both elements together in one role.
Right. So as we talk about changes of the marketing function, maybe you could help us to kind of set the stage and give us some perspective of what has happened in the last few years before we talk about what is coming up.
So we'll start off with marketing first as a function. It is basically the team that gives the salespeople what they require. So that's the core essence of the function. So usually you see marketing ratio to sales is a ratio of 1 to 20, for example, because you need a lot more sales team to go out to disseminate the information, to engage your clients, etc. So the core purpose of the marketer is to ensure that when these salespeople go out, they are equipped with the right things to say, with the right tools to utilize, and with also the right message that they should use to encourage your end user to have the right behavior. But as we move along, we will observe that we start to track this. So metrics start to come in. So we are moving then into setting SMART goals. So SMART goals, being time-oriented, being very specific about the goals, they were still very sales-oriented at some point. So it started with having very sharp sales goal, which account you want to grow, where you're going to get a business from. And when this happened, then we realized that this cannot happen if we don't dive deeper into the enablers. So then you will see increasingly that aside from having marketing as a function, commercial excellence actually came out in the last 10 years or so as a very significant function across multiple organizations. When I first joined pharma, it was not really a very strong function of its own. We may or may not have it in a lot of organizations, but increasingly as we start to build in the metrics, then commercial excellence came in as a function to try to drive these metrics. So I would say commercial excellence is born as it's like a child of marketing. So a lot of people in Comex, they were marketers at some point, or they are still marketers, in this case like myself.
Right.
Yeah, so that's basically the whole evolution, meaning that from just being a tool disseminator or message creator, we start to track. And then when commercial excellence come in, that's when we also are riding on this whole digital evolution of matters, where we start to use a lot of CRM systems, and we start to use our iPads. Gone were the days where we just leave a piece of paper at the doctor's clinic. That's when people realize these things can be tracked more effectively in terms of the dropping rate, the utility rates, and that's when commercial excellence start to track not just the final sales numbers, but into the engagement level.
Right.
And I think that's where we currently are at.
Right. So really the quality of interaction during these face-to-face meetings, what you can capture with the e-detailing, that's what you're referring to,
Yes.
right? Yeah, right. So you started by saying that marketing was a function that was first and foremost here to support the sales. There are this ongoing and perpetual debate in the industry about, the role of the reps and how it evolves, and the fact that, customers are also educated HCPs that can find information online. What is your position on this, and where do you see the trend going?
I think when you look at any consumer, including HCPs, everyone is well equipped to source for information online now. In fact, even way before all this digital evolution, HCPs on their own, by their own remits, they are able to source for information. They know where the latest clinical updates are. They know which conferences to attend, etc. So this is where the HCP get their source of information.
Right.
I think the role of a marketer there is always to enable the salespeople to have that right level of conversation when they meet the doctor at the clinic that is under the category of a meaningful conversation. So back to your point, right? I think there's no point in giving the sales rep airtime if it's just like a hi bye or just to clock the call. I think what we try to do here in marketing space is to equip the rep with the right conversational tools that can make that doctor's 5 minutes worthwhile. So it has to be laced with information or knowledge that will be able to supplement what they already know or to be able to improve the level of understanding. Our end recipient of information, the doctors, a lot of time their information is based on what they would have received in school or would have maybe proactively searched for with their knowledge search, but they may not see the deeper layers of that patient stratification that we are able to give them that kind of thinking scope around on.
Yeah.
So our job here is to shape that behavior, but for the end purpose of helping the patients.
Yeah. I have the impression, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that I feel that a lot of medical role and especially those customer-facing role, MSLs, medical science liaison, and so on, have also appeared maybe in the last 10, 15 years and are increasingly important nowadays.
Right, absolutely. Like you have rightfully pointed out, the medical people came into the scene maybe in the last 10 years or so. I mean, we have a lot more of the medical function taking center stage in the pharmaceutical industry. And it's absolutely critical and important because firstly, they are medical people. So they are able to review and they are able to validate the kind of messages that we send.
Right.
So you notice that just now when I was talking about how we as marketers enable our sales team, I never use terms like, oh, we want to entice the doctors to change their behavior. That is not something that we should do. We bring in medical so that they are able to review the things that we do so that we always go out from a clinical and from a patient perspective. So they have that very important buffer role in terms of what we do and to ensure that no matter how we evolve, and especially going into so many different touch points now, we are always compliant within the pharma regulation context.
Right. One of the other big buzzwords in pharma since years is omnichannel. It started multi-channel, omnichannel now, and this logic of really being able to provide value to the customer, whether face-to-face or online through different means.
Omnichannel is still a work in progress, I have to say. You know, I think we are very much still multi-channel. I think it becomes true omni-channel when the channels can correlate to each other.
Right.
And when the messages actually resonate across different touch points.
Yeah.
So what we are doing now primarily as we start to utilize these digital tools that we have is just to be present in that space. And as a result, we end up being very channel agnostic. So we just go in, send a message, and we actually don't really comprehend what purpose that channel serves, except to check off my box to send X number of emails in a month. Yeah. So I think to answer back your question, therefore, I feel that when it comes to omni-channel strategy, I don't think we can call ourselves successful at this juncture until we reach a point where we can really have resonance across the different touch points. I think right now we are starting on a journey with that ambition in mind. And we are trying to steer people away from the multi-channel elements, which is basically just sending things off specific channels and not thinking the true essence of why I'm having this message or this material sent at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think it resonates a lot because this is exactly what I hear all the time from a lot of your peers in pharma. So in the context of this omni-channel journey, the industry is talking about personalization and creating content that are not only channel specific, but that are going to be as tailored as possible.
So in terms of personalizing the approach, I would say that there are increasingly more tools out there to enable us to do so. So the current CRM infrastructure as it is on its own does not give a lot of insights to what kind of personalization the recipient wants, because all it can tell us is based on what we feed into the system. And
Right.
what we feed into the system is going back to the previous question, based on what we are told to do. So a sales rep is asked to send how many emails a month. They feed, their marketers give them this particular mail, they feed it in, right? And to have them to understand that doctors in this segment should be receiving this message, doctors in segment B should be receiving B message, takes a marketer to understand that first before the sales team can do it. So I would say, therefore, by virtue of the system right now, it is not happening. However, there are many companies out there who are able to offer insights based on what we leave behind as a digital footprint. So there's a lot of cookies that maybe our doctors could have left behind. So this could give us a bit of an insight towards what kind of information they are seeking after.
Right.
And there are companies that are able to kind of like correlate that to the specific specialty or based on specific behavior. And then they can kind of like let us know a couple of things. One is the channel affinity of the specific recipients. Are they, do they spend a lot of time on social media? Do they spend a lot of time on emails, etc., on LinkedIn? Or do they have a specific persona? Like, do they look for a specific kind of information, and not just from a clinical perspective, but even from a personal life perspective? And we are also increasingly, of course, having predictive AI even being marketed to us as marketers, so that we can start to predict the next best action, based on their, how they reacted to this message. Then what's the next best mail that you should send out, for example. For me personally, I think a next best action would only be good if we can first feed in a robust set of a first data point. So the first layer of data that we create that will stimulate the next best action must be very robust. And as I said, right now, I think we are just in a journey of trying to get there, trying to first get utility ramped up, trying to make this not just like a KPI because we have to do this action, but because I see that by doing this action, it enables me to achieve this level of engagement. Then once we get the momentum up, then we can move towards next best action to personalize our message. I always tell my reps that tech is not here to take over your role. It is here to enable you to be a better version of who you are at the clinic, because now we have multiple touch points to augment your message.
And you feel that this is resonating?
The general observation for the industry is not, the issue is not so much of the reps. It is because the marketers have not yet embraced this on a very general level.
Interesting.
So if the marketers are not seeing their central role in content creation across the various omni-channel touchpoints, then they will not be able to furbish the reps with the right set of content to fit to the different segments that we are talking about. There will also be limited co-creation of these segments, understanding of their needs and all that. So I would say that this is a discovery process, because the number one layer that we need to first elevate in terms of the skill sets and the understanding of the role of omnichannel are the content creators, and that is the marketer. There is no magic agency that can come in and help you to fit every single touch point with the right message if the marketer is not able to tell the agency what they need in that space. Then it comes down to the commercial heads to work together with the marketers and the sales reps. So commercial head includes your BU heads, your sales managers or sales directors, etc. Then they must embrace the role. Until they own the outputs from this engagement, we cannot get the reps to come on board. So I would say that this is right now still a work in progress. I have to say that we have tried piloting this down to the rep level, involving several of these cross-functional team members that I just mentioned, as to try to draw that meaning from this layer of engagement. But coming back to the main point is we still have to show, after we do all this successfully, we still have to show the reps what is in it for them, right? So Is it the sales uplift? There's a guarantee. Not necessarily so at this point.
Hard to prove, right?
How to prove? Okay, so we just try with incentives first, right? Yeah, but with incentives, it's always a little dangerous in the sense that we end up incentivizing for the action, not for the mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to trigger the wrong pattern just for the sake. Yeah.
Yes.
Makes sense. So that was, I mean, what you said reminded me of my experience in medical device. When we started in creating multi-channel content, omni-channel, I mean, we realized, and our marketing team realized how of a huge content vacuum it was suddenly creating, and a huge pressure for the marketing organization it represents, because, as you said, you need to have something that is very tailored, very segmented for e-detailing, but you have also what you put on social, what you're going to put on emails, what you're going to put on WhatsApp and messages and so on. So
it is definitely a problem, right? I think what you have just mentioned very vividly is basically the amount of how overwhelming they can feel. I mean, it's overwhelming for all parties, right? For the content creator, it's like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do now? Do I just take this one material and just make several versions of this and fit to different channel? My job is done, right? And then we have the Comex, the poor Comex folk trying to show people the dashboard, what it's talking about. And then we have maybe GMs who look at the dashboard and like, what does this mean for me? You know, and then at the end of the day, the sales director is like, oh my God, the numbers are looking the same. What are you talking about? So there's all these many layers of conversation going on that is quite overwhelming. So I do think that this is definitely one of the biggest pushback, because we are overwhelmed before we start doing it. And only because our knowledge of the business is also our biggest blind spot. Because the business has been running with a certain way of engagement and way of working. And now we are trying to introduce change, which doesn't necessarily come with very tangible, immediate outputs.
Right.
And in this space of change, it is increasingly being infused with more and more digital and techie talks that sounds very overwhelming. Sounds like we're going to replace a sales rep one day. And so people are having a bit of a, hold on, what's happening? Right? So I think that's definitely, that sense of being overwhelmed with what's happening is certainly the biggest, I would say, prohibitor of how fast we can go right now. Yeah.
And so how do we drive change successfully in that case? Because you guys are often very large organization, matrix organization, complex structures.
The number one thing in change management is to define your stakeholders. Yeah, I think that's absolutely critical. Sometimes we are very blinded by the stakeholders who are giving us the consent, the budget, or the endorsement. And we forget about the stakeholders who are maybe the muscles of the body, or the stakeholders who basically have the rights to say no. We miss this out. Or the stakeholders who are very strong influencers in the process, right? So I think we first have to define the stakeholders, and then from there we have to engage the stakeholders as well. So in a big organization, and for me, I mean, I deal with many countries, you can't go everywhere. So you have to pick and choose your teams. So don't be afraid to really cherry pick certain teams, but go very deep with the teams. Choose the people who have the acknowledgement of what this is supposed to bring for them, co-create the objective together with them, and then to invite them to onboard the process. But while we agree on the endpoints that we are going after, we also need to give them the space to navigate their stakeholders as they do it. And then we agree to come back at some point to revisit what we have achieved. And that's when we start building the storyboard. And so what I do is I get my people in the markets, in the team, to build the storyboard for me. Then I can sell this to a bigger pool of stakeholders and, you know, get that exchange happening. So I think it's really just creating this whole cycle of learning, but be very directed and focused with the right people.
I really like it, and I think it's super helpful, because a lot of people are overwhelmed or fear change. Those who are supposed to drive it are struggling with it, and part of it is that they often stretch themselves too thin and try to change everything into one go. But what you're saying is that you need to pick your battle, basically, not try to convince the world right away, but get these guys to build a successful case study, and from there
scale it up.
Scale it up.
Yes. Amplify like your
Right.
podcast.
Thanks for the branding.
Yes.
As an individual, you have gone through your successes and challenges. What kind of advice would you give the younger Michelle to things that you have learned?
I think the younger version of myself very much hinged a lot on my own personal knowledge of things. Like if I look at the problem, it's almost like I know the solution. So I go out and immediately I execute the solution, right? So if you do this as an individual contributor, no other people need to move around with you. I think that works perfectly well. But in our job scope, even though we are not talking about the direct teams working with you, but again, being in like above country role is really about the the dynamics of different personalities and culture that I have to work with. You can't be the solution dispenser as it is. So I think that's the advice, of course, to my younger self, is that I could have maybe tried to co-create that solution with my stakeholders, even though I know the answers, but it's good to hear different perspective of the solutions and come to a consensus on this together. And I also want to take this to feedback to your previous point about that change management, because sometimes what we see in organizations when they want to drive change, another way to do it, and this is a very brutal way, is just a mandate. Right? You give a hard mandate that we all have to do this. So we implement this by when, I'm going to change your incentive scheme in this way. You're going to get the action. You're not going to get a buy-in or the mindset change. Let's remember that we are generally a more educated world today. Gone were the days where you really have, when you have hierarchies, again, not during my time, but you have hierarchy, maybe you're someone that's perhaps they hold a certain educational background versus others, and therefore that top-down thing is kind of there, that kind of subservient mentalities that's way back in the past. Now we are in a world where everyone is equally educated, so we all have that knowledge and everyone would have a point of view. So I think we have to respect that.
And I think that you're right. The more feedback you get, the more input. I love the concept of co-creation as well. We talked about this multiple times. It's also a great way to avoid having pushbacks, right? Because suddenly the solution is not you bringing it up to them, but they have their say, they have built it, co-created with you. So this is a very smart way of getting buy-in and getting people with you on the journey. Thank you so much, Michelle, for taking the time. It was great to have you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for watching, following, liking. I hope to see you soon on our next Amplifiz Podcast episode and speak to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.